degrees. I'm KIRO 7 pinpoint meteorologist Nick Allard.
It is sunny and 71 degrees in downtown Seattle. I'm Ursula Royteen.
Download our app to listen on your smartphone. KIRO Radio 97.3 FM. News and talk. Powered by the Pacific Northwest.
The Big Lead is brought to you by 3010 Weight Loss for Life.
The Dori Monson Show on KIRO Radio. This is The Big Lead.
Coming to you from the Carter Subaru studio and streaming on Facebook Live. Welcome to The Big Show. Man, hearing about the church in Tacoma, seeing some TV news stories over the weekend, Holy Rosary Church, and they're going to tear it down, this more than century-old building. This, of course, is an extension of the fact that we are the most unchurched region in the country. The more liberal you get, and this isn't a political commentary by me, but the more liberal a place is, the fewer people embrace religion. There's an absolute correlation there. And so I heard that the attendance at that Catholic church in Tacoma was way down. It reminds me of the church I grew up in, Calvary Lutheran Church in Ballard. And I've told you guys the whole story about how a bunch of people from a little farm town called Mountain, North Dakota, right after World War II, town of about 200, and they all immigrated out to the Seattle area and landed in Ballard, part of Ballard's Scandinavian ancestry. And the first Calvary Lutheran Church that they built burned down, and then they built another one. That was the church I grew up in. I doubt if I'll ever know every nook and cranny of a church the way I knew Calvary Lutheran. I mean, I was baptized there. I was confirmed there. We had group sleepovers there with our youth group. You get to know I was on the council for a couple of years when I was in my 20s. And you just get to know these places so well. And I'm pretty sure, I'm 98% sure that church I grew up in has been torn down. Same reason, declining number of people attending the church every Sunday, and my wife and I moved out to the suburbs, and we commuted in for a little while after we moved out to the burbs, but then we wanted to find something in our own neighborhood, because when you have kids, it's tougher and tougher to take them a half hour into the city to go to church on Sundays. You want something in your own neighborhood. But I can relate, to what the people who are longtime members of that Catholic church down in Tacoma, what you must be feeling. 100-year-old, beautiful building. It's gorgeous from the video I saw this weekend. And they're going away because we don't embrace religion anywhere near the level that we used to. Our population has grown dramatically, but our church attendance has shrunk dramatically. And again, that's just an offset. The more liberal a region is, the fewer people you have going to church. That's just a fact. So it's sad. Sad to see what's happening to some of these great old edifices around our region. And with that as mere prelude, just sparked by the newscast there, let's get right to our big lead.
The Big Lead. I told you so.
Yeah, when the Seattle teachers got that 11% raise last year, who came on the radio and told you that too much is never enough for teachers' unions? Your old pal Dor has been proven right again. As Seattle teachers, they were squawking about striking just 1 year after having gotten an 11% raise and striking a year ago. And the numbers are rather staggering now. What this means is that you get a pay cut because every tax increase is a pay cut. And I know what the teachers union will say is, no, we're using existing revenues. Unsustainable. The school board knows it. The union knows it. they are now making money that unless they find a way to hike taxes, and of course their dream is an income tax. That is the dream. But the amount of money they're making, capping out at $124,000 a year. Teachers who were making $102,000 1 year ago are now looking at $22,000 raise. It's a 22% raise for Seattle teachers over this 4-year period. Of course, you get great benefits. You get a pension plan. Teachers retire at age 59, set for life financially. And the taxpayers continue to have to take pay cuts. Every tax hike is a pay cut for taxpayers. But for a job where you do only work not even 9 months out of the year, it's a 180-day contract. That's an awful lot of vacation time. 180 days is 36 weeks. You get 16 weeks off. Almost 4 months. You start at $62,000 now in Seattle, and it'll cap at $124,000 a year, and then a massive benefits package on top of that. And so now the game will continue because they said, well, Shoreline made more and surrounding districts made more. So now all of the surrounding districts are going to say, Seattle's making more. It's a very insidious way that the unions play the taxpayers to try to get fantastic pay for a glorified part-time job. And I know that makes teachers furious. But when you get 16 weeks a year off, that's part-time gig. And then I always have teachers say, I have to work on my master's and PhD if I'm going to cap out at $124,000. Well, a lot of people get their master's and PhD before they enter the workforce. So that doesn't set you apart. That just means you're getting the same educational accreditation that anybody else would have to get if they wanted a very well-paying job. But when you factor in the $116K, or the 16 weeks off on top of the $124,000 a year, it's the equivalent of a $150,000 a year job now. If it were a full-time job, like most of us have to work. It's a good gig for those teachers. It's a really good gig. But another I told you so, I guarantee you that a year from now, more districts are going to threaten to strike because we haven't done enough because we're so selfish and greedy as taxpayers. How come it's always the taxpayers that are greedy and the teachers' unions just doing it for the kids? You know what? I'm trying to keep more of my money for the children. I'd like to give it to my kids instead of giving it to a greedy union. Next up in the big lead.
The big lead. Top story.
Today, Bob Ferguson, the dangerous attorney general, most dangerous politician in my 24 years on the air, Fergie announced that he is filing yet another lawsuit against the Trump administration. What's he up to now? About 28 of them? See, the problem is Fergie thought he was going to be governor, and he thought that all these lawsuits were going to make him governor. But now Inslee's running again. And so Fergie, who's been thinking about all his delusions of grandeur, he has to figure out something to stay somewhat relevant. So he's filing yet another lawsuit against the Trump administration.
As you know, the government has been unwilling to meet those standards set forth in that Flores Agreement with disastrous consequences.
And this is the standards for immigrant families.
Now, rather than meeting their legal and moral obligations under the Flores Agreement, the Trump administration proposed on Friday to let themselves out of that agreement. So just to be clear, they have obligations under that agreement to provide for adequate treatment of immigrant families and children. Right. Number two, the Trump administration has been unwilling to meet those obligations, as has been well reported and documented. Number three, why we're here today is because now the Trump administration seeks to not have to follow those rules at all. Rather than meet them, let's just be done with them.
Well, and the administration says, no, we want to standardize the rules, so we have a patchwork of how various states and agencies are handling this. But Fergie wants to, once again, make the things better for people who try to come into this country illegally. And that oftentimes has dire consequences for the tax-paying citizens of this country. Let me tell you a story that I bet you haven't heard anywhere else today. Border Patrol agents have made an arrest over the weekend. They caught Carlos Blancas Rojas down in Tucson, Arizona. He's 37 years old. They arrested him for being illegally present in the United States. This guy's a Mexican national. He also has been on the loose for 11 years after allegedly raping a child here in Washington State. I said allegedly. No, convicted. He was convicted of the felony by the state of Washington for raping a child in 2008. He still has an active bench warrant in Washington State. And now that he was caught down in Tucson, and thank goodness we had federal agents that were able to catch him, now he can come and stand for his warrant once again in our state. But think about that. We just let child rapists go free in this country. We let them go free if they are illegals. And why? Because, as I've talked about, let's look at Mitzi Johanknick. Mitzi Johanknick, but I'll get to her in a second. The lies she's telling about this database are incredible to try to cover herself now. But because you have people like Mitzi Johanknick, Dow Constantine, Bob Ferguson, Jay Inslee, they care more about illegals than they care about cops. They would rather that cops be at more risk by getting out of this database. They would rather let a rapist walk free, the man who raped the white center woman, allegedly, and trust that he'll go to Mexico on his own. They would rather let an illegal walk free than to protect his victim. And, of course, that rapist, alleged, went back to his victim and then violently assaulted her, she said. And she came in the studio and told me about it. Why? Because we have courts that would rather protect illegals than protect citizens. And on it goes. But this Carlos Blancas Rojas been free for the last 11 years after being convicted of raping a child here in Washington State. And I'm trying to get more information. The Tucson Border Patrol people told us about this, but I'm trying to get more information on the rape he committed of a child here in our state. But he was then to be deported. He gets right back into this country, and that's the level of security that we give child rape victims here in Washington State. It's unbelievable. It's simply unbelievable. And on it goes. I had a story they told you about last week about an illegal who had committed 2 rapes, and he was let free. That happened back east. It is a constant battle to try to keep, that was in Maryland, by the way. Illegal immigrant rape suspect was released from a Maryland jail 3 days after being arrested because they wouldn't turn him over to ICE. ICE asked to keep the man in custody, Rodrigo Castro Montejo, arrested for second-degree rape and second-degree assault. ICE said, will you hold him for us? And Maryland court authorities let the guy, the illegal, who's also an alleged rapist, they let him walk free. And he remains free. Everything is completely upside down in America on issues of immigration. Next in the big lead.
The Big Lead. Top trending.
Hey, Liz Warren was at the Seattle Center yesterday. Elizabeth Warren, who lied about being a Native American so she could climb the ladder of academia more quickly. She said, she gave a speech. They said there were 15,000 people by the International Fountain at the Seattle Center. And I do think, look, Biden has no chance. I think that Elizabeth Warren is a more formidable challenger to Donald Trump than Joe Biden is. First of all, the media just goes gaga over her because she'd be the first female president and all of that. She'd get the same treatment as Hillary. She's kind of got the same Hillary tone that didn't seem to work very well with a lot of voters in mid-America. But she was talking about minimum wage.
A full-time minimum wage job in America will not keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. That is wrong, and that is why I am in this fight.
When was a minimum wage job supposed to provide for a mom who has minimum wage job skills? That's never what a minimum wage was supposed to be about. Let's see. What else did she say? Oh, she wants to raise the income tax. She wants a wealth tax that every year for richer Americans, you'd have to just give 2% of your net worth, not your income, 2% of your net worth to the federal government. Think about that. You know, if you've saved $50 million, okay, money I'll never say, but she would want you to just turn over $1 million every single year to the federal government because she can spend it better than anybody who earns that money.
When you see a government that works great for the rich, works great for those who can hire armies of lobbyists and lawyers, works great for the wealthy and the well-connected, it is not working so well for much of anyone else. That is corruption, pure and simple, and we need to call it out for what it is.
Except we have the lowest unemployment rates ever in the black and Hispanic communities. We have wage growth across all sectors. This economy's worked pretty well. It's working really well for workers, for people who want jobs. Oh, and then she lost all credibility with this.
This entire country owes Governor Jay Inslee a big debt of gratitude. He has pushed the issue of climate change onto this debate agenda, and we need to thank him for it.
Oh, jeez. So, a brand new national poll, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders ahead of Joe Biden. But that was Warren in Seattle yesterday, and that is your big lead.
The Big Lead on KIRO Radio.
Okay, Ursula's going to check the news, and then Brock Heward is going to drop by. The Monday Monson quarterback, shocking NFL news this weekend. A quarterback retiring in the prime of his career in life. Andrew Luck. See what Brock says about that, and lots more next on the Dori Monson Show.